Hey, on a high right now because it's right after Landscape Summit 2023, our second one of the year. And I have someone very special that I'd like you to meet today and hear his story. It's unusual, and I think you'll really be blessed by hearing it. So, why don't you introduce yourself, your name, and where you're from?
Yes, I am Caleb Storts, and I am from Knoxville, Tennessee.
Okay. And this whole Augusta thing was way out of the scope for you, something you never thought would be. So tell me a little bit about your family and your background and where you were before, and then we'll get into your Augusta story.
Sure. Yeah, like you said, it was a completely new atmosphere for me entirely. I've been working with my parents, Jason and Tracy Storts, here in Knoxville, Tennessee, really from a very young age. They've been in business for about 23 years now, 24 years, and I've just worked with them during the summers. And, whenever I had free time to make extra money, my dad always wanted to build something that his two sons could work with him and develop together. Um, but there's definitely been a lot of struggles along the way. And due to all of that, and I guess you could also say our relationships not being as strong as we would have all liked them to be throughout the years. Um, it hasn't really been my interest by any means. I would not say that I enjoy lawn care. But that being said, I've always had a desire to run a business. And so him owning a business, running a business, that portion of it interests me. Um, but really to stick with your question, Augusta, hearing about Augusta for the first time and my mom and dad wanting to purchase a franchise, it was definitely not something that I favored by any means. Like I said, I enjoyed the business side of things. And so I wanted to keep a cut above was our previous name. I wanted to keep a cut above. Like that was the family run business for years.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, it was an interesting dynamic hearing about it for the first time, and I'm sure we'll get into it later in the interview. But it was it was not something that I necessarily uh, supported from the beginning.
Yeah, and one of you was more into large equipment and bigger projects. Was that you or him?
Uh, are you speaking of me or my brother?
Yeah, one of you two was. I think your parents had told me that.
Yes, my brother was. He did a lot of heavy excavation work a few years back, and he really enjoyed that. I also enjoyed running equipment. It was always a good time being on a a big piece of machinery. I worked in hardscaping for a little while, and I had a real interest of bringing hardscaping to a cut above. I was working
Yeah.
for a different company, and I enjoyed that aspect of it, but I knew from the beginning and seeing the other company that I was working for, it was going to be extremely difficult to scale that business model. Being very meticulous about details, I was like, "There's no way I can pass this skill set on to somebody else." But yeah, the heavy equipment side of things was definitely an interest of both of ours, but not necessarily something that we were able to operate within a cut above prior and Augusta now. Just not a service that we're interested in offering.
Yeah. So when you and your brother were younger, your dad built this whole thing hoping you two would be a part of that. And did you mow for him for a while? And then because relationship things or whatever, everything happens in all kinds of families. And even with the best relationships, some family members can't work together. So, but it sounds like you both stayed in the industry, but moved out of whatever your dad was doing.
Yes, yeah. So my brother went into, let's see, he was working for a cut above. Um, I'm really bad with timelines, by the
Oh,
way, so
that's
I'm not
okay.
going to dates of things because I'll mess it up. But he was working for a cut above. As a little backstory, I was actually living in Florida. I had moved with my girlfriend at the time. Um, we had been together for, I don't know, about a year and a half, and I was working in hardscaping for a different company. I'd worked with my dad previously. I moved into hardscaping, really enjoyed it. It was a trade that I enjoyed, and my girlfriend at the time wanted to move to Florida. She was born and raised there in Tampa, and so we moved to St. Petersburg, and really enjoyed it. I loved the state. I loved Florida. I loved being by the beach. I started doing hardscaping down there. There was a lot of really technical, really detailed, meticulous jobs that we were on, and I was a big fan of that. But being in the heat, being in the humidity, it was extremely tedious. It was extremely physical, and I did not enjoy that aspect of it. Long story short, things did not really work out with me and her being in Florida. I think the stress of the financial stress, living expenses are expensive down there, and also just yeah, it was an interesting dynamic to say the least. Very toxic relationship, and I did not feel comfortable continuing that. I felt like it was just a dead end road for me.
Hmm.
And so we ended up splitting up really while we were down there, ended up moving back to Knoxville. And around that time, my brother had transitioned over into heavy equipment, doing a lot of excavation and prep work for home building pads, things like that. And so I came back to Knoxville. There's a space of time there, about 6 months, and I actually ended up getting back with my ex. Again, horrible decision. Not a put down on her. I was just not mature enough to handle a relationship, and I felt like I was. Um, and my relationship was definitely strained with my parents, and so I didn't really want to come and work for the family company again. It just
Right, right,
wasn't something
right.
that I wanted to do. And so I actually went into heavy equipment as well, working for a construction company that built apartments. And so we were laying pipelines and prepping pads as well. And so I did that. That was actually beginning of 2022. And it was during the winter months. It was cold. It was brutal. Working out in the mud. And so I did that for a bit. And then hearing about this is really when I believe it was beginning of 2022 is when Jason and Tracy went to conference, the Augusta
Hmm.
conference, and uh, or I guess conference and then training.
Yes.
And they were in love with it. Uh, they were fully bought in at that point. They had very few things that dissatisfied them about the whole organization, and so I was hearing a lot about it at that point. I heard a little bit about it when I was in Florida, um, from the meeting that you guys or the meetup that you guys had at the expo.
Mhm.
So I got a few details then, and then I was really getting an earful of it, once
I
I was
bet.
back in Tennessee. And so I I liked the fact. What I enjoyed the most was the fact that my dad was. I felt like he was finally buying into growing his business, which is what I always
Mhm.
wanted to see. I wanted to see it be either huge or non-existent. I wanted to see it
Yeah.
grow and be something successful or be non-existent. I didn't like the fact that we were always in this in-between stage. There
Mhm.
were a lot that he worked prior, building it to, I'd say, 200 to $500,000. But uh, I always saw the in between stage. I was always seeing, the struggles of trying to find employees and trying to build good leadership and, managing things. I just didn't like it. There was lots of stress. And so the fact that dad was buying into some of these, trying to build the business in a profitable manner and using the things that Mike teaches, I was really interested in that aspect of it. Um, so yeah, that's kind of the backstory as to how I got here and heard about Augusta. Um, The short answer is my parents, and that's the long answer. So
Mhm.
I construction, and then or excavation, and then middle of the year, I think it was February or March, I began working back with my dad just as a field laborer. That's all I could. That was my mental capacity at the
Yeah.
time. Going through a lot of stressful things. Like I said, I came back to Knoxville and pretty much immediately got back with my ex. And so there were lots of stressors around that whole
Mhm.
situation. And so I was pretty tied up with that. Um, so that was pretty much all I was able to handle, was just being in the field working.
Yeah. So I first met you, I believe, at the
Hmm.
expo. Met your parents there. So when I met your parents the first time, I'm not like a salesy person or whatever. That's not my job. I just want to help people. So when we went to expo, we had no expectations of what would happen there, if we would have any exposure to people. Well, when we got there was people lined up to talk to Mike and everything. So I met your parents and I just invited them to conference. Like, don't commit to the franchise, just come and see. And then after they came, I think they went out to dinner with some of the franchisees and heard that it was all that they had heard about. And then they wanted to join, but they did talk about you during that time and that you were going through a lot of stuff. And that was his dream to have his son work with him, and that he had lots of reservations. So when you heard about it, what was your reservations about your parents getting into this?
Yeah. So like I said before, the biggest thing that I enjoyed was having a family run business that was branded by us. Uh,
Yes.
and I a part of me just, I didn't want to see that go away. Like I said, I wanted to see this thing either be huge or be non-existent, and I wanted it to be branded by us. That was
Right.
a that was my childhood. I wouldn't call it dream, but for the business, that's what I wanted to see. And it was um it was interesting because not really being a part of the business up to this point, other than just a laborer during the summers, as a high school and middle school kid. Um it Looking back now, I think it was very childish for me to have any input or any um
Opinion?
opinion on the matter. I look at it now and I'm like, why did I even care? I barely worked in the business, and uh, I shouldn't have had an opinion at all. I should have been 100% supportive of the fact that my parents were just simply trying to grow, which is what I should have also wanted for them. But that's how I felt at the time. And I was like, you guys need to just go to these conferences and, get as much as you can from this and apply it to your business and continue heading the same direction that you are, which was really dumb because we hadn't made any progress over the past, 5 to 7 years, really. Uh,
Yeah.
and so continuing down that path would have just put us in the same position that we were always in. So that was my reservation.
So, what were the holes that you saw in their business, though? For instance, when you think of having, which is a phenomenal because they made it, between the 200,000 to 500, all this on pen and paper. And so, were there things like that that you knew about and you thought, do this better? But hoping that they would, you wanted to build the team that, hey, they get out of this pen and paper.
I don't know if you can still hear me. I think we're
I
having a.
can now.
Okay. Okay. I think I got the majority of that question. So I'm going to try and cover it as best I can. Um,
Sure.
the I felt like which, looking back now, obviously hindsight is 2020. So there's a lot of things that I see now that I didn't see then. But to try and answer your question, from my perspective, when I was just first coming in, it was, I felt like it was a lot of, I felt like my dad needed to grow in a lot of areas that he might not have seen at the time. Um, not just, not necessarily just personally, but I felt like he needed to let go of things. He
Yeah.
has a hard time, I guess, giving up responsibilities that he enjoys to an extent, but it's not necessarily, I didn't feel like it was necessarily him enjoying the activity. It was the fact that he enjoyed having the control of the activity.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like he had a hard time giving that up. And I would say that was probably one of the biggest bottlenecks that I could see. Um, like I said, I did not know how the business ran outside of daily operations that I saw. Like you said, he was running everything on pen and paper, and that was a huge constraint. But I didn't know anything else. Other than the few companies that I had worked for, the hardscaping company in Florida, and then the small hardscaping company here in Knoxville. I didn't know anything else, so I didn't necessarily know anything about a CRM being a benefit, or uh, personal growth having that much of an impact on a business overall. So I would say the biggest thing that I saw that needed to change was I felt like my dad needed to give up some of the responsibilities that he had on his plate. That way, he could focus on other aspects of the business, such as, advertising. I felt like there were a lot of. We always had a very basic Google presence, and we never really spent anything on Google Ads. I remember seeing him very stressed out when we joined Augusta and started building an advertising budget for the year. He was very stressed out about the fact that he was going to be spending all of this money, and we were just going to hope that it was going to, have a return. Um, and so I felt like he needed to dive into that and just do it for a year and see what happened. So I guess those two things, um, giving up the responsibilities that were really restraining him in the business and taking up a lot of time that was unnecessary, and then personal growth as well.
Yeah, and I know he had his kind of attitude was like, I'm going to get older. I'm getting older. And I know Tracy was working with him in the field too, which she enjoyed, but that's not going to last forever, right? And so when you came to the expo the next year, you came little hesitant from what I remember and just not real sure. But you had heard all of the stuff the whole time, and then you actually met us. Now, after that experience, were you a little bit more open to what they were doing?
Absolutely. Just like for those watching the interview that Miss Liz had with Jason, my dad, he went into more detail about how the interaction that he had with Mike really impacted him and his desire to join Augusta. And it's very heartwarming when a person of his caliber can have an impact on somebody, that has struggled with business for so long. It had a massive, massive impact on my dad. Um, he's never really felt that personal connection with somebody that he knew could really have a drastic benefit and drastic, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but a drastic impact
Mm-hmm.
on his livelihood. If my dad always knew that if he could make this business thing work, uh, our families would have a much better life. And having a direct impact, from somebody of his caliber, um, it made a huge impact on him. And me seeing that, I knew that Mike had to be somebody that could give a personal touch, and that was exactly what I felt when I met him there at Expo and yourself for the first time. Um, it was a phenomenal experience. Uh, I still remember it to this day, my first interaction with you and my interaction with Mike. Um, I will always have our first photo saved in my phone, in my files. It's one of my favorites, and it really represents a lot to me. I feel like I've grown substantially since that time, and looking back now, it really is crazy to see how much we've grown and changed. And it's uh, it's really all comes back to the impact that Augusta can have on someone as an individual, and um, a business that is existing or might just first be starting out. But for us, an existing business that it just had an incredible impact on.
So when you came back from Expo, did your dad ask you if you'd like to come on as an employee?
Yes, sorry. There is some delay. I switched to my Wi-Fi, but hopefully we'll have a better connection. Yeah.
Oh,
I don't remember if it was thereafter. What was the date of the expo? That was
October.
yeah, that was in October. I believe I was already a general manager at that time. Um, so I split up with my girlfriend in August. It was August 1st. And some backstory on that might be interesting for the viewers. I split up with my girlfriend. I moved out of the apartment that we were in at the time. And mind you, I was employed uh, by, which we were still branded as a cut above, but I'm just going to go with Augusta. I was working for Augusta under my dad. And really since the beginning of the year. But he knew that simply because of the things that I was going through, I just could not mentally and physically handle, having more responsibility. And I appreciate him not offering me, a position more than that at the time. But as soon as we split up, I did not want to sign another lease on an apartment because I just wanted to stack cash. I
Yeah.
felt like a lot of the stress that I had experienced in my life up to this point was based on financial insecurity. Um, waking up every morning and not necessarily knowing how you're going to get through the day because you
Yes.
don't have money uh, is terrible. It's a horrible way to live. And so I just wanted to cut all of my expenses, have really own nothing. I ended up going and selling pretty much everything that I owned. I had a car at the time. I got rid of my car. I sold everything. I bought a bicycle and I had basically a suitcase full of clothes and a few things in a storage unit. Um, like that was it. And it was really the most freeing feeling I've ever had in my life because I had nothing tying me down, and I was like, I can't really get any lower than this. This is pretty close to being homeless, other
Yeah.
than the fact that I had a job with what I felt like had potential, potential to grow. And so around that time, I started heavily listening to audiobooks. I wasn't really fully bought in with the Augusta culture, so I wasn't listening to much of anything that Mike was putting out at the time. Um, a lot of Alex Hermosi, as I know you know personally. A lot of Alex Hermosi. I found a lot of interest in the way that he conveyed and communicated information, and that really resonated with me. And so I ended up asking my dad if I could use one of the pickups that we were using for work at the time to live in. So I was literally living in an F-150 that had a ramp rack on the back of it, and I would hang my hammock up from the ramp rack to the shelf behind the cab. It was an interesting setup, and then I would shower at the gym that I would go to every morning. I would shower there at night. I would go park in the parking lot, sleep, wake up the next morning, go to the gym, and then go to work. And I feel like a lot of times in life, being 100% committed while still having a backup plan is nearly impossible,
Yep.
because in the back of your mind, you're always thinking, well, if this doesn't work out, I can always dip. For me, that was not the case. I couldn't. I had no other option. Um, I was forcing myself to stash my money, so I had no money. I was always broke, and I had nothing to do other than work out, eat, and sleep. Um, Being without a vehicle, my dad didn't want me driving the truck more than necessary, so I had no form of transportation. I really threw myself into growth mode. I had to force myself to grow. And so around that time, my dad really saw the desire that I had to change my situation and to grow as a human being and to better myself. And of course, he saw that. We were working together on a regular basis, and so around that time, I believe it was before we came to um, the expo. But it was around that time that he asked me to be the general manager for the Knoxville location, and I was very grateful for the opportunity. I was actually running a drop shipping store at the time, which was taking up a lot of my time. And when he presented the opportunity to me, I basically was like, "This is what I need to go full in on." Um, I had a little bit of success with the online store, but it took up so much of my time that I was like, I can't do both. So I need to figure out which one I'm going to do and do it 100%. And so I felt like I made a really good decision to come on with my dad full time as the general manager. And yeah, that's pretty much where things started off. And then yeah, we made it to um, Expo, and I got to meet you guys for the first time.
That's awesome. I remember when you came that you were really struggling. And I'm interested to know, as your dad is watching you personally transform, okay, maybe you weren't listening to all the stuff that we have about business and all of that, but just listening to somebody of Alex caliber without them even knowing you were listening to, he was probably starting to see you change.
Absolutely. It really came from a personal. It wasn't. I didn't. I talked about it a little bit because I was so interested in it. Of course, somebody who's never really felt the need to grow personally. When you first dive into that, I feel like you change dramatically in that first period, and then obviously it tapers off slightly, even though you're still continuing to grow. So I definitely spoke a lot about the things that I was learning about to my dad, but it was all personal growth that I uh, was aware of. I became very self-aware of the situation that I was in, and I think that's the biggest thing that he saw in me, is the fact that I became teachable. I wanted to learn, I wanted to grow, and just simply that I became aware of my situation, I think was the biggest thing that uh, I guess reassured him that I was ready for more responsibility. Because, like you said, I was not fully connected with all of the content that Mike produces, and listening to as many audiobooks as I could. Just simply being aware of your situation and being willing to change and to grow and to receive advice from others is huge. That's really all you need, I feel like, to begin growing as an individual, is just the willingness. If you're
Yeah.
willing, the uh, the advice is going to come by default from somebody, and if you're willing to take that and apply that and learn and grow, you'll be in a better place. And I feel like that's what he saw most.
Yeah. So jumping forward now, how long have you been a GM with him?
So I guess a little over uh, a year. It was around this time last year that I became the general manager for the Knoxville location. I have a hard time pulling from past years because I feel like it doesn't really matter in today's context.
Right.
Um, I was just a field laborer, and so I did work with my dad during the summers, like we've talked about. But really, my journey began when me and my ex split up. That was the massive turning point, and me being fully sold on this is what this is my only option. This is what I'm gonna do full time for the next 10 years. That was really my commitment. I talked to my dad about it, and I said, "This is what I'm gonna do for the next 10 years, and we're gonna see what happens, see where it goes." And after maybe after 5 years, we'll reassess, see how things have developed and changed and grown. But until then, we're just gonna put the reps in. We're gonna do the hard work and focus on personal development and growing in that aspect. So yeah, I would say. Roughly a year. I'm not sure exactly when I became general manager to the date. Like I said, I'm bad with timelines. But yeah, roughly a year now.
So the reason I ask is you've been through one full year of 4 seasons, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And then you jumped into, we're having them wait until we get to Copilot to actually go into a CRM, but you went with Jobber or something, right? To get them in a system.
Yes. Yeah. So we started using Jobber just before Jason. Well, I say we. Jason was using Jobber just before he joined, I believe, Augusta. Um, really out of necessity. Um, Once he saw how drastically it really does change and benefit a business, he felt the need to instantly dive into a CRM, whether it was the one that we stuck with long term or just one that was going to get us through. And so that's what we've been using. We've loved it, but it's definitely not. Um, there's a lot of aspects of it that are not. I guess, tailored to landscapers and lawn care companies, and definitely not Augusties, however you want to say that. So that's really the biggest thing that we're looking forward to. Switching to Copilot, I cannot wait. We're actually starting today with learning all of the things. I don't know how it's set up, but yeah, we're gonna start on that today. That's the goal. So.
Awesome. So where are you guys at in trucks, employees, and revenue at the end of here of 2023?
So let's see, we've got 4 trucks that are in the field full time. I've got a truck that I use kind of as it doesn't even have a ramp rack on it. It's not set up to be used in the field. I can pull a trailer, but that's about it. I use it to pick up equipment if I need to, pick up parts, things like that. That's kind of my daily driver at the moment. And then we've also got an estimator car. It's a Honda CRV that Jason uses a lot to do estimates, do quotes, things like that. So we're at 6 vehicles, company vehicles. We currently have 5 employees, not including myself, that are working in the field. We had, I believe, 8 and then and then myself, so 9 employees during the peak of the summer. We're hoping to be. I would love to see us at 950 at the end of this year. Jason's really pushing for 9, so we'll see where we end up. But that's kind of where we're going to end the year out this year. That's about roughly 40 to 42% growth over last year. So we couldn't be more excited. Honestly, it's a huge improvement just in the first year of being with Augusta. Being stuck at a plateau for so many years, just seeing something grow like
Yeah.
that is it it really hits home and helps you see um, really what's possible, with the right systems, with the right coaching, with the right desire to grow personally. um, it's awesome. Yeah, so that's where we're at.
Awesome. So I know your mom is well, your mom, Tracy, is
Yep.
completely out of the field now, and she you guys until we get into co-pilot and things. And then is your dad full-time estimator?
Yes, for the most part. I It's funny that you ask this because I feel like my roles have substantially changed since we came back from conference. There's a lot of improvements that I need to make as a general manager leading my employees forward. Um, my training definitely has to change. So I've been really caught up this past year with just trying to juggle the daily operations. And because of the fact that I haven't been fully, I haven't taken full responsibility for everything that's been happening. Um, we've had a lot of maintenance issues. Well, I wouldn't necessarily even say a lot of maintenance issues, but we've had some maintenance issues that have tied me up much longer than they should have. And then I guess some of the systems that I've been trying to implement have not been in a I guess in a good direction. For example, like some of the notes and some of the I guess job notes and then photos of properties have just been a little bit overkill for where we're at, and I've been consumed with that.
Yep.
Uh, what I enjoy, but not what the business needs. And I've seen that a lot the past few months, and really focusing now on uh, the the needs of the business in which involves me. That's what I'm going to focus my attention on as a general manager. And yes, Jason has been doing estimates pretty much full time. He does oversee projects a little bit, which I feel like is because I have not taken that role myself, which I'm going to now try and do a little bit more going into 2024. And then, yeah, Tracy is our office manager. She takes phone calls, schedules appointments, does over the phone estimates, and yeah, schedules the appointments for Jason to go out and meet with customers if need be. So,
Awesome. So you're in Tennessee. So tell me about your services. Are they very simple? Are you going into winter services or snow, or how is that structured?
so we don't really have any snow. I wish we did. I would love more snow, but yeah, that's not really a service that we offer. I'm sure we probably could in the mountains, but it's a drive for us, and I'm sure the amount that we get is just not worth our time. Winter services is something that we implemented last year. It wasn't really we didn't have a good understanding as to what all needed to be done on a property for a winter service. And I didn't do a good job of conveying that to the employees at the time. I was fresh as a general manager and not a good leader, to say the least. I thought I was, but I wasn't. Didn't know how to lead people and implement new systems and operations. So winter services was something that we struggled with. We're going to try and do a lot better with that this year. As far as the services that we offer during the year, um, they're mostly simple. We do still take on a few projects here and there that definitely need to have a project manager on, usually myself or Jason, to oversee and make sure that everything goes smoothly. But compared to what we've offered in the past, I would definitely say we are much closer to a simple service business model than we ever have been, and which has been awesome. It's relieved a lot of stress on me as a general manager, on Dad as a business owner, and really even on Tracy as an office manager. Being able to know the scope of work that we do, and with full confidence convey that to a potential customer, asking about a service that we may or may not offer.
Has it been a struggle for you to not be able to do the big projects with the excavators and all the equipment?
No, it really hasn't been, because I wouldn't necessarily say I was burnt out, but knowing that I couldn't pass my skill set on to somebody else, or at least I couldn't with the leadership skills that I had at the time, um, I don't really have too much of an interest doing that line of work anymore. I love the business model of doing simple services because anybody can do them with good leadership, and it's just easy. It makes sense. It's scalable, and if scale is something that you're trying to achieve, it's a phenomenal business model. You can't go wrong with it. And so, yeah, the heavy equipment is something that I almost see as a hobby now. I get to do it a little bit here and there, and yeah, it scratches the itch, and I have no interest to further that and implement those services. Yeah, in our business. So.
Yeah. What you guys' plan for the upcoming year? So we're now going into winter. For those listening, we're in October. Your mowing will probably end in November. And then do you guys start back up March 1st?
Yes, thereabouts. Obviously, it just depends on the weather. But yeah, we'll hit that again beginning of the year, mowing again. Really going into the winter months, we're going to focus a lot of our attention on um, training. For me personally, I would like to make sure that my core group of guys that we hold through the winter months, whether that be 4 or 5, we're not really sure yet, really just depends on the workflow. I want to make sure that they are fully prepared to begin training other employees that I bring in next year, because I will not have the time um, to devote to training employees individually. That's just not going to be something that I'm going to be able to offer. So I really feel like I need to focus my attention on making sure the core group of employees that we carry over into 2024 have a very good understanding as to how we need to train employees to hit this next mowing season at full speed. Um, Other than that, winter services, I'm sure we're going to be doing a lot of mulching, trimming, property cleanups. Um, it's interesting you ask. We probably are going to be doing a few hardscape projects. So I'll be able to oversee those. A lot of the employees that we have right now enjoy hardscaping, um, simply because we don't do it. If we did it
Yep.
all the time, I probably have a different opinion on it. But uh, Me and Jason discussed the projects that we want to bring on that need our attention and require us to be there. So I have signed myself up for a few hardscape projects. So yeah, that'll be thrown in the mix as well.
Yeah, awesome. So I want to turn a corner a little bit. Usually I would talk about business all the way to the end, but I have to say that I watched your dad, I watched Jason completely transform. So when I had an interview with him, he was very transparent and talked about his weaknesses and things, but his release of responsibility, his relationship with you, the maturity and personal growth that I saw, and then see in him and Tracy, I see people who are more confident. They're not so scared about the future. They're just a lot more settled, is what I have found. And then I've seen this dramatic change in you as a leader and as somebody that I wouldn't even have to ask you, but I would know that you're absorbing a lot of content that's above yourself and pulling you up. And when I saw you guys just a few days ago at conference, just the dynamic between you guys, they were open and very transparent to everything you said, like accepting your point of view, where you were at with things, what you were excited about. And it was so awesome to see instead of like, oh, that's his thing, it's different than us, just accepting you for how you are. And I just loved that. It was just so refreshing to see you guys. You might have different opinions on a lot of stuff, but you guys were really cohesive as a team, joking around, talking about whatever. But it was still a great relationship. And so, could you share with the listeners, like what you listen to now, what you're kind of feeding on? What is making you continue to change like this? You just seem so solid now.
Yeah, so I would say the biggest change for me has I it's funny because I actually watched for the first time the interview that you had with Jason last night. I hadn't had the opportunity to watch it, and he made a really good point that I hadn't really thought about in a while. But he said, "You are what you eat," and that also applies to the content that you consume. And I 100% agree with that. Um, it is very interesting to see those that do consume a lot of personal growth content, how they grow as a person. It's surprising, but it actually works. And so the biggest thing that um, I've learned is sometimes, especially as you grow, it's not necessarily what you do, but it really comes down to what you don't do. And so you're asking what I listen to and what I consume, and I'll be honest, because of the life that I lived before, I made this dramatic shift and change. It really comes down to what I'm not doing. I have to. It takes a lot of uh, mental power to say no to a lot of the habits that I had before in my previous life. And so that's what has helped me to grow the most, is by making sure that those things continue to stay suppressed.
Yeah.
um, New things and better things take the place of those old habits by default. um, so I feel like for a lot of people, if we can, instead of picking something up that's new, simply putting something down that is old that you want to shed, will open the door for something new and better. So I am listening to a lot of audiobooks. Honestly, I consume Alex Hermosi more than anybody else, simply because I resonate with him. I think a lot of times we try to, at least for myself, I try to pick up something new and I don't connect with it on the same level. And so I just default back to, what I enjoy the most. But I've listened to much more of Mike's content. I've loved the turnarounds that he's been doing, and so that has also been something that I've drawn a lot of benefit from and a lot of knowledge from. But again, I think for me personally, the biggest thing is just saying no to the things that you know are going to drag you down, separating yourself from people that you know is going to have a drag on you, that don't have your best interest, really separating yourself from the old environments that you were in as well. I think the easiest way to change your behavior is to change your environment. And that was one of the biggest reasons I wanted to live in the truck full time, is because I knew I just need a separation. I needed uh, that alone time with myself to feel comfortable just being me. And when you fully submerge yourself in who you are as an individual, um, it shows your weaknesses very strongly, and they
Yeah.
become very disgusting, and you want to change them. At least that's how it was for me. Once I saw those things that were really having a negative impact on my life, it forced me to change, because I hated them, frankly.
Yeah,
So
so I have seen that really prevalent in our industry, the kinds of addictions people have, and some are because they get hurt in our industry so much more. And I've seen them become addicted to pain medication to the point where they started selling it, were put in prison, think they're doing good, get back out, get hurt, and then they're back on. It's a vicious cycle, and they end up losing their job because they're driving with too much of it in their system.
right,
And they're so used to it at that level. I had an employee that when I had him go straight in and get tested because I was concerned one day, he had 900 times of the limit of people that use pot on a regular basis. And he had denied that he was on anything except Tylenol. And that's how addicted he was.
right,
And then I've had other people that, they're alcoholics and they put themselves in 12-week program, and they told me they had to change where they lived. They had to change all the people they hung around, and even family members. And it was the hardest thing ever, they said, to say, I'm so sorry, but when we're together, you'll still be drinking and I can't be with you. And that is huge. Like you said, to walk away from everything that included. And those are just some, two of the things that our industry struggle. What we do is so hard. And so I think that would be what you're saying is just a huge testament. It is not easy. Having addictions with anything is difficult to move away from. It has to be extreme, like you said. It almost has to be a definite cut off from everything and everything always went. If you still live in the same town, you have to have a plan of action. And so there's still be triggered.
Absolutely.
So you're and are you an overthinker, or do you just like to think through things to figure them out?
Um, yes, to both. I struggle with being in a at times. It's very difficult for me to stay on task. Um, I tend to be very scatterbrained at times. If I'm stressed out, I cannot stay on task, and I have to, take a breather, take a break, whatever it is. Um, but I will say that um, forcing myself to grow, putting myself in situations that have been uncomfortable, has really helped me to uh, think like a leader, be level-headed, um, and just see things for what they are, and exclude the emotion that is surrounded by whatever that situation is. Um, the past few weeks, I've had to do a lot of quality control. There have been a lot of, well, I say a lot of, there's been a few angry customers that I've had to deal with. Um, and in the moment, those are not things that we want to deal with.
Right.
It's easy to Sometimes it's easy to overthink and to let that one situation ruin the rest of our week and to stress us out more than it should. But I've found that if you'll just dive into the situation, um, realize what the issue is, and view it for that and only that, that a lot of times we can make a good decision and have a good outcome, um, just by handling it. I guess I'm having trouble forming my thoughts here, but yeah, just handling it in the way that a leader would. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's very stressful. It's extremely stressful. I had a situation this past week this past month, where a customer was very upset with an employee, and we didn't even work for the guy. It was actually a neighbor of the customer, and the individual was running around our customer's yard chasing my employee that was on a lawnmower. It was a disaster, and I had to show up and try and calm everybody down and figure out what was going on. It was just, and all of this was happening in front of a brand new employee that we had just.
Nice.
It was just like, I felt like everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. Um, it was just terrible. But through all of that, I feel like a lot of times it is very easy to overthink and allow situations of that size and of that are that dramatic. It can affect your entire week when it doesn't need to. You need to just handle it, deal with the stress of it, and move on and put it behind you, and not allow it to ruin the rest of your day, the rest of your week, whatever it is. But it's very challenging at times.
So what are your plans for the future?
Uh, it's a good question. I am at much. I'm at a large crossroad right now. My goal coming into Augusta, whenever I was at the first conference that I attended, I guess in 20 end of 22, um, or whenever it was, January. I guess it was
This
January.
year in January.
Yeah. So I really wanted to just build out as many locations as we possibly could, open as many locations. And it's interesting because a lot of other franchisees have had the same goal, I feel like, and they have also changed, where they're headed. Uh, it sounds great, but I think a lot of us need to realize that we're playing the long game here. That's the right game. It's the long game. It's the old money that we're chasing. And I would rather be rich for sure than, rush the game and have a lot of stress and be very unstable. So having that goal I really wanted to open one every year, beginning this next year. Um, I really would like to see. Uh, I'm enjoying the building process, so I would like to build this current location into something that is just uh, really, really solid. Um, we're currently still out of a storage unit, and I would like to own a location. Have actual brick and mortar location, um, a shop of our own. So that's really the next mile marker. That's the next big thing for me personally. I want to have a place where my employees can come to work and feel like they are at work and not just
Yeah.
this business that these guys run that we work for. I want it to be a a stable place of business that the employees can connect with a little bit. I feel like they'll connect with it a little bit better. Um, so that's the next thing, but really long term goal. I think the biggest thing that I find value in and that makes me happy is seeing myself grow and being a better person for those around me. Um, when you die, you don't die with anyone else. You die with you. And if you're not happy with you, then I feel like it's a wasted life. And a lot of times, human beings, I feel like they don't live for themselves 100%. And so I want to live for me 100%. And the biggest thing that I find value in it is being a more valuable human being and growing personally. Um, Business is what we do every day, and so I really want Augusta and lawn care to be my vehicle to being that better individual and growing personally. And so long term, I want to build this business into something that builds me as a great individual, because I know that as we grow, um, the general managers and the owners and the office managers, whatever, will become bottlenecks, and our businesses cannot grow past us. And so, me knowing that I want to grow something big, I will also have to grow into something big. And so, that's my goal, is to grow the Knoxville location as big as possible and see how big we can get it before I want to pull my hair out. And at that point, we'll reassess.
That's awesome. So it's not often that we have a platform where we can really share with others what we're thinking, what we're feeling, where we're at. But if you had to give advice to somebody else in your place, number one, working with family and how to handle that dynamic, and then somebody where you are in the stage that you're at, running a business for somebody else, maybe, or somebody that's young and is really not sure of their direction and might have some of the addictions or be in bad relationships that they need to really get out of.
Yeah, so like we discussed before, environment is huge. If you're at a green light, you go. If you're at a red light, you stop. It's that simple. If your environment changes, the things around you change, your actions will also change. So I feel like if you are struggling with an addiction, if you're struggling with a bad dynamic as far as a relationship that you're in, just change your atmosphere, change your surroundings. That would be my first piece of advice for those struggling, um, and even for somebody who wants to grow. I feel like changing your environment is a fantastic place to start. It doesn't have to be drastic, doesn't have to be across the country necessarily, but even 30 minutes across town, just to where you're not next door to mom and dad, or you're not next door to, your high school friends or whatever it is. Just making that shift and that change, it's a huge relief. Um, as far as running a business of our size, I think the biggest thing is, especially for myself, I want to grow and I want to improve and I want to change. And running a family owned business, family run business, you better hope through growth that you're growing in the same direction.
Yeah.
And so the biggest thing for us as a family, me, my parents, is to really, really make sure that we want to continue growing before we dive into that. That's been a lot of the discussion this year is, do we want to go into profit mode, or do we want to keep our feet down, go into another year of growth? And I think the conclusion that we've come to is that times are easy right now. And I think, as Alex Hermosi says, from the advice that he's received in the past, that when times are easy, that's when you go hard. And until it gets hard, you continue going hard. And so I think that's our direction. But you have to make sure that those that you're running the business with are on the same page with you, because it requires lots of growth, it requires lots of personal growth. And if you're not growing in the same direction, you're growing apart. And that's never good if you're in a business together. So I think your goals have to be aligned, your vision has to be aligned, and as long as you're growing together, you're growing in a good direction. At least even if it's growth that is in somewhat of a wrong direction, you will still be together. And being together is always better than being apart, in my opinion. Um, I don't really remember what other aspect of that question I didn't cover.
No, that's good. And what would, just to your younger self, people that have addictions or bad relationships, to get out of them?
Yeah, like I said, environment is huge, but I think being aware. I think so many people nowadays are just not aware of their situation. Um, there's so much that goes on around us. There's so much media, so much social media. There's so many other voices. We are social beings, and I think it's really difficult for a lot of human beings to simply find time for them to be alone. And I think being okay with being alone is something that so many human beings are not okay with,
Yes.
and they don't connect with. And I think of life kind of as a video game. Um, if you think of, if a character in a video game is who you are controlling, your soul and your mind are really operators of the avatar in which you are in. And I think it's really good to connect with your avatar. Know who you are as an individual, know where you need to grow and improve. And if you're trying to grow and you're trying to be a better person, the only way you're ever going to be able to do that is being very, very aware with where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
And so I advise a lot of people to just take some time, man. Go to the mountains, go to the beach, wherever you're at. Find some space to just sit and be quiet and embrace your thoughts that go on in your head, and slow everything down for a space of time to where you really get to know where you're at, where you need to change, and where you need to improve, and have goals, have a path to where you want to go. I think it's very hard for a lot of human beings to grow because of the fact that they don't know where they're growing to. If you are growing sideways, it's probably not going to last very long. If you need to have direction as to where you're going, have goals. Maybe take some notes on a regular basis as to, keep track of where you're going and where you are. Just being aware and being connected with yourself is super important.
So, as we wrap up today, do you have any kind of quote you would like to share or something on that order?
I do. I have. For those that listen to Alex Hermosi and stay connected with him, he has a quote that he says he wants to have on his tombstone one day, if he has a tombstone, if that's still a thing when we all pass away, when for our generation. But his is, and I might butcher this, but I say it over and over to myself all the time. The beliefs, we question all of our beliefs except for the ones we truly believe in, and those we never think to question. And that quote means a lot to me because I came from a really rock bottom part of my life. And now I feel like as long as I make good decisions financially and for me personally, I will never, ever, ever be in the situation that I was once in. And that's huge because I would have never really thought myself to be there. And it really opens your eyes to the beliefs that you currently have might be really constraining you and being a constraint in your personal growth, simply because they're not true. I feel like a lot of human beings allow themselves to believe things that have been passed down to them. They should really be forced to question. It's just like I don't remember who it was. I should have prepared better for this question. But whoever was that ran the first 1 minute mile, or I think it was a 1 minute mile, whatever it was. It was a race that no one had ever beaten a real mark. And once the first person did, the next year it seemed like everybody was able to beat that time. And so sometimes it's all up here. It's a mind game, and once you really see where those beliefs are causing constraints in your personal growth or in your business, you can make huge leaps forward simply because of what you thought to be impossible. And as kind of a second quote that I like to think about a lot, that one is good for trying to figure out where you want to grow to next and figuring out what's constraining you. But on a daily basis, I really resonate with Mike saying, putting in the reps. I tell myself all the time, hard work needs doing. And so when things are difficult and when things are uncomfortable, that's when you're growing the most. And
Yep.
if you always put yourself into those uncomfortable situations and just push through, hard work needs doing. And if you continue to do hard work, you can ensure that you're not going to be in the same position that you were last year. And that's a really good place to be. As long as you can make sure that you are consistently growing and doing that hard work, you're going to grow and you're going to be a better you.
Awesome. Well, that's a great note to close on today. And I so appreciate your generosity to give us your time so that we could tell your story. And I think it'll help a lot of people.
I love it. Well, thank you for your time as well. I've enjoyed it. It's been great.
All right. You have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. You do the same.